You wish that you would be the sort of person who is attractive to women. This is what Job figures out in the midst of his suffering in the book of Job, because Job is tortured terribly by God, who makes a bet with Satan himself. The most unstable social situation you can generate is young men with no access to women. Get yourself together, stand up straight with your shoulders back, take on some adventure. Find your calling.
Jordan Peterson was on this podcast and he starts talking about how to be more attracted to women, and he brings up the Bible. So I think reading the Bible can help you become more attracted to women. So make sure to watch to the end because of a Bible verse that will tie all of this together.
And you might think, well, what am I envious of? I'm envious of their attractiveness to women. It's like, okay, well, now you know something about yourself. You know that one true motivation that's making itself manifest to you is that you wish that you would be the sort of person who is attractive to women. Now, of course, that's an extremely common longing among men, period, but particularly among young men. It's like, well, what makes you so sure you couldn't have that? Well, how about, here's an answer. You don't have enough faith in yourself. And maybe you don't have enough faith in, well, I would say the divine. You don't believe that the world is characterized by enough potentiality so that even miserable you has a crack at the brass ring. And like I talked about this actually practically in one of my previous books, because I wrote a chapter called Compare Yourself to Who You Are and Not to Someone Else at the Present Time. Well, why? Well, your best benchmark for tomorrow is you today. And you might not be able to have what someone else has on the particular axis you're comparing yourself with them on, but you could make an incremental improvement over your current state, regardless of the direction that you're aiming. And it is the case, and this is a law, the return on incremental improvement is exponential or geometric and not linear. So even if you start, this is why the hero is always born in a lowly place, mythologically. Right? Christ, who redeems the world, is born in a manger with the animals to poverty-stricken parents in the middle of a God-forsaken desert, in a nondescript time and place, isolated. Well, why? Well, because everyone young struggles with their insufficiency. But that doesn't mean that great things can't make themselves manifest. And
exactly. You're like looking at someone and you're jealous of all the things that they have, or how good they are at sports, or how the body that they have. Those things are, to some extent, you can achieve. You can exercise and you can have a better body. You can practice and get better at sports. You can work hard to make more money. Those things are definitely possible. And it's even better when you come from nothing, I guess, from the story.
Part of the insistence in the biblical text, for example, is that it's incumbent on you to have the courage to have faith in yourself and in the spirit of reality, the essence of reality, regardless of how you construe the evidence at hand. Right. Look at me. I'm so useless. I don't know anything. I don't have anything. It's hopeless. I don't have it within me. The world couldn't offer me that possibility. Well, what the hell do you know about that? This is what Job figures out in the midst of his suffering in the book of Job, because Job is tortured terribly by God, who makes a bet with Satan himself to bring him down. And Job's decision in the face of his intense suffering is, I'm not going to lose faith in my essential goodness, and I'm not going to lose faith in the essential goodness of being itself, regardless of how terrible the face it's showing to me at the moment happens to be. And I think, okay, what do you make of that claim? Well, let's look at it practically. You're being tortured by the arbitrariness of life. That's horrible. Now you lose faith in yourself and you become cynical about being. So are you infinitely worse off instantly? And then you might say, well, yeah, but it's really asking a lot of people that they maintain faith even in their darkest hours. It's like, yeah, that might be asking everything from people. But then you also might ask, this is a very strange question, is if you were brought into being by something that was essentially good, wouldn't that thing that brought you into being demand that you make the best in yourself manifest? And wouldn't it be precisely when you most need that you'd be desperate enough to risk what it would take to let it emerge?
So you kind of make it seem that reason could be the thing that takes you out of a place of darkness, sort of finding that calling through reason. I think it's also possible when reason fails you to just take the leap. Navigate not by reason, but by finding the thing that scares you, the risk, to take the risk, take the leap, and then figure it out while you're in the air.
Yeah, well,
While you're making risk, while you're doing the things, chasing your dreams or following the things that God has called for you, I think that makes you more attractive. There's something about them that makes you want to be with someone, like especially with someone who has a dream, someone who has passion for something, because that is attractive, and that would make women more attractive because you're following the calling that God has for your life, and you're not making excuses. You're not hiding in your shell saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, or you're too afraid. But when you take a bold step of faith, that's what makes a difference, that you are taking the bold step of faith.
I think that's always part of a heroic adventure, is that ability to cut the Gordian knot. But you could also ask from an engineering perspective, okay, what are the axioms that make a decision like that possible? And the answer would be something like, I'm going to make the presumption that if I move forward in good faith, whatever happens to me will be the best thing that could possibly happen, no matter what it is. And I think that's actually how you make an alliance with truth. And I also think that truth is an adventure. And the way you make an alliance with truth is by assuming that whatever happens to you, if you're living in truth, is the best thing that could happen, even if you can't see that at any given moment. Because otherwise you'd say that truth would be just the handmaiden of advantage. Well, I'm going to say something truthful and I pay a price. Well, that means I shouldn't have said it. Well, that possibly, but that's not the only possible standard of evaluation. Because what you're doing is you're making the outcome your deity. Right? Well, I just reverse that and say, no, truth is the deity. The outcome is variable, but that doesn't eradicate the initial axiom. Where's the constant? Right? What's the constant?
It may be when you said Abraham was being fed by naked ladies.
That's an interpolation, obviously, but
would
have been out of keeping for the times.
But it does make me think, sort of in stark contrast to Nietzsche's own life, that perhaps getting laid early on in life is a useful starter. Step one, get laid and then go for adventure. There's some basic, like you mentioned, satiation of base desires.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to bring the sexual element in because it's a powerful motivating force and it has to be integrated. I don't think it's adventure. It's romantic adventure.
Right. But the lack of basic interaction, sexual interaction, I feel like is the engine that drives towards that cynicism of the incel.
It is,
in Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground.
There's very little doubt about that. We know perfectly well anthropologically that the most unstable social situation you can generate is young men with no access to women. That's not good. And they'll do anything to reverse that situation. So that's very dangerous. But then I would also say there's every suggestion that the pathway of adventure itself is the best pathway to romantic attractiveness. And we know this in some ways in a very blunt manner. The Google boys, the engineers who are too, what would you say, naively oriented towards empirical truth to note when they're being politically incorrect, they wrote a great book called A Billion Wicked Thoughts, which I really like. It's a very good book, and it's engineers as psychologists. And so they'll say all sorts of things that no one with any sense would ever say that happen to be true. And they studied the pattern of graphic fantasy, and women like graphic stories, not images. So women's use of photography is literary. Who are the main protagonists in female graphic fantasy? Pirates, werewolves, vampires, surgeons, billionaires. Tony Stark, you know.
Yeah.
And so the basic graphic narrative is Beauty and the Beast. Those 5 categories. Terrible, aggressive male, tameable by the right relationship, hot erotic attraction. And so I would say to the young men who, and I have many times to the young men who are locked in isolation, it's first of all, join the bloody club. Because the default value of a 15-year-old male on the mating market is 0. And there's reason for that. And 0 is a bit of an exaggeration, but not much. And the reason for that is, well, what the hell do you know? Like, you're not good for anything. You have potential, and maybe plenty, and hopefully that'll be made manifest. But you shouldn't be all upset because you're the same loser as everyone else your age has always been since the beginning of time. But then you might ask, well, what should I do about it? And the answer is, get yourself together. Stand up straight with your shoulders back, take on some adventure, find your calling, abide by your conscience, put yourself together, and you'll become attractive. And we know.
Okay, going back to what he's saying, okay, obviously to not get laid is not the potential before you need to go and chase your dreams. That's something that I would say do not do, because that will come into your marriage and that will ruin a lot of your life during that time. But it is true. Find your calling. Find what God has called you to do and chase those dreams. Start following what God has you to do and work hard. Don't be stuck living in your mom's basement or whatever. Those aren't the things that are going to help you. Go outside. Don't just wait for some girl to show up at your doorstep. It's not going to happen.
We know this is true. The correlation between male sexual opportunity and relative masculine status is about 0.6. That's higher than the correlation between intelligence and academic achievement. I don't think that there's a larger correlation between two independent phenomena in the entire social science and health literature than the correlation between relative male social status and reproductive success. It's by far the most fundamental determinant.
Well, what's the cause and effect there?
It's a loop. Men are motivated to attain social status because it confers upon them reproductive success, and that's not only cognitively but biologically. I'll give you an example of this. There's a documentary I watch from time to time, which I think is the most brilliant documentary I've ever seen. It's called Crumb, and it's the story of this underground cartoonist, Robert Crumb, who was in high school, was in the category of males for whom a date was not only not likely, but unimaginable. So he was at the bottom of the bottom rung, and almost all the reactions he got from females wasn't just no, it was like, are you out of your mind? Right? With that contempt. Right? And then he became successful. And so the documentary is super interesting because it tracks the utter pathology of his sexual fantasies because he was bitter and resentful. And like, if you want to understand the psychology of serial sexual killers and the like, and you watch Crumb, you'll find out a lot more about that than anybody with any sense would want to know. But then he makes this transition, and partly because he does take the heroic adventure path, and he actually has a family and children, and he's actually a pretty functional person as opposed to his brothers, one of whom commits suicide and one of whom is literally a repeat sexual offender. It's a brutal documentary. But what he did in his adolescence, after being rejected, was he found what he was interested in. He was a very good artist. He was very interested in music, and he started to pursue those sort of single-mindedly, and he became successful. And as soon as he became successful, and the documentary tracks this beautifully, he's immediately attractive to women. And then you might ask too, even if you're cynical, it's like, well, why do I have to perform for women? And the answer to that is something like, why the hell should they have anything to do with you if you're useless? They're going to have infants. They don't need another one. Right? Partly the reason that women are hypergamous, unless they want males who are of higher status than they are, is because they're trying to redress the reproductive burden. And it's substantial. I mean, the female of any species is the sex that devotes more to the reproductive function. That's a more fundamental definition than chromosomal differentiation. And that's taken to its ultimate extreme with humans. And so, of course, women are going to want someone around that's useful because the cost of sex for them is an 18-year-old period of dependency with an infant. So I think the adventure comes first.
Heroic adventure comes first.
Well, it's complex because
adventure comes first. Getting married, finding someone that God has planned for you, that will be the best decision ever. But you can make yourself more attractive, I would say, 100% by chasing your dreams, following what God has for you, exercising, being healthy, being someone that they want to be around. And anyone can achieve. You don't have to have a lot of money or whatever. Obviously, you just want to be with one person. I think this is very interesting. So now I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. Romans 12:11 says, "Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically." So go to God today, work hard, do your best, know that He has a plan. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe. I'd love for you to do that today. And you guys might like this video here. Peace.